All right, so we're going to do another quick video here and test out a little bit of new gear, see if it helps or not. So I get asked pretty frequently how you choose the right bow, and a lot of it comes down to your personal usage, and we'll go over that. But before we get there, I want to go through a couple pieces of terminology that I think people use incorrectly pretty frequently in this business. The first one, and the one that I see most frequently, is the term smooth. That term is supposed to apply to the amount of force that you feel from the time you clip on your release or your fingers to the string to the time that that bow hits its back wall. A bow that is smooth is going to feel exactly the same from beginning to end. A bow that is not smooth is going to be a lot of your speed bows, some of your shorter draw length bows, some of those kinds of things are going to have either one or multiple humps that you can feel in the process of the draw cycle. And so I think you can find a video or a review calling just about any bow on the market smooth, which is a disservice to that term. The next one is back wall. Back wall is simply put where the bow stops. So when it reaches your draw, when it reaches your draw length and you're at the end of the draw cycle, some bows have limb stops, which physically contact the limb, which usually provide a very firm draw stop. Some bow have cable stops, which are usually a little bit softer. That comes in a little bit to preference. Cable stops can affect your shot if you are overdrawing and pulling them into the cables too much, or if they're not timed quite correctly, but that's a little bit beyond what we're going to go into today. You'll see another one that's just referred as ATA a lot, and that's axle to axle. So that's the measurement from this axle here to this axle here, which is the height of the bow at the cams. So with some of those terms in mind, we're going to kind of move forward here into how you select the proper bow for what you're going to be doing. And the first question I always ask everybody is how are you going to use it? Are you going to shoot targets? Are you going to shoot 3D? Are you going to shoot under 40 yards, up to 50 yards, 100 yards? How are you going to use that? If it's hunting, what is your game? What are you chasing? Deer, elk, pigs, bears? And what distance are you chasing that animal at? One of the biggest things that can help you with a bow that you can't necessarily get in your hands, so if you're looking at online reviews, if you're looking at a bow that you can't get locally for whatever reason, is the specifications of the bow help to a certain extent, but one of the biggest things that can help you choose a bow is understanding how you're going to use that bow and the limitations of your surroundings. So for example, if you're going to be in a ground blind chasing turkeys or deer, this bow is going to be terrible for you because it is very, very tall. If you're going to be doing some spot and stock, you're going to be walking around out in open country. If you like to do stuff off the ground or from maybe some larger redneck style blinds or pit style blinds, that may not be a hindrance to you. The next biggest thing that I see pretty frequently is the argument between light bows and heavy bows. So this bow is a carbon fiber riser, carbon core limbs, so it is very, very light. The upside of that is if you're packing it into a mountain, it doesn't weigh very much. And so, that may be the important part of your equation there, or your limitation on that. If you are in an area of open plains where you're doing a lot of spot and stock and there's a lot of wind and there are a lot of those kind of variables, a light bow can be terrible because they're going to be very susceptible to wind and to outside input. Whereas a little bit heavier bow is going to be more resistant to those things and easier to control in an environment like that. So, the biggest things to look at when you're looking at a bow aren't necessarily the specs of the bow as far as speed and those kinds of things. The vast majority of the bows that are put out anymore are of capable speed to harvest animals or to shoot 3D targets or those kinds of things. So unless you have a specific restriction on, like some of the 3D leagues and some of the tournament leagues, you have to have specific speeds. Overall speed is kind of irrelevant to what you're talking about from a hunting standpoint. It matters, but not to that extent. So when you're looking at bows, to start with, the biggest things that you need to look at are fitment. So the bow needs to go to your proper draw length. It needs to have the proper window of draw weight adjustments for you. It just needs to fit. And much like shoes and cars and jeans and everything else, the brand matters far less than the fitment. So I advise everybody going into the shopping realm to just pick up every single bow you can get your hands on. Draw them if you can, shoot them if you can, but just get a feel for it. See if the grip feels right, if the weight of the bow feels right, if the draw cycle, the back wall, all of those things feel correct to you, and you'll find one, and oftentimes it's not the one you thought when you went into the store, but you will find one that just seems to fit. I guarantee you, if you're out shopping for a bow that fits, you will end up shooting better and have better results than if you just go buy the latest, greatest, whatever from whatever brand. And I realize that probably will upset some people, but from my shoes, you need to understand that as a shop owner, my goal is to get you into the piece of equipment that will get you your best results. And that's always fitment. It's never a brand. So if you're doing a lot of spot and stocks, a lot of open country stuff, longer distances, you know, you're going to want a bow that's a little bit faster. You're going to want a bow that's probably a little bit taller axle to axle so that you can get that stability back. And you're going to want a bow that, of course, fits well. If you are packing into the mountains where there's less wind normally, and weight is more of a limitation for you, you know, maybe a bow that's got carbon fiber riser versus an aluminum riser is a better fit for you. If you're spending a lot of time in a ground blind, maybe a really, really short bow is better for you, both axle to axle and front to back. You know, if you're getting to the point where you're getting a little bit older in age but still want to be a part of archery, or you have shoulder injuries or any number of things, maybe a crossbow is the best fit for you. I know a lot of people kind of view crossbows as cheating, but ultimately, in my opinion, if I had a choice between struggling to pull this bow back and, you know, not enjoying it as much, not having as much fun, and ultimately not being able to be as ethical about my harvest, or shooting a crossbow, it's not even a question. To me, it's more important that you think about the animal than about your pride. So, you know, those are kind of a basic overview of how you select a proper bow. I can go more in depth with some of the speed ratings and how they affect broadheads and how they affect your arrow choice and all those kinds of things on another video. But hopefully that gives you a little bit better idea of how you kind of sift through all of the terminology and the nonsense that's associated with some of these bows in advertising and through online reviews.